Hey everybody, welcome to the July 2025 Database Security Office Hours on the Ask Tom platform. My name is Richard Evans. I'm your host, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Ethan Shmargad. He's a product manager of Oracle Database Vault. So he's going to be taking us through Oracle Database Vault and securing your autonomous database today. So we're doing serverless today. Hey, Ethan, did you know that we crossed over the point where we are closer to the year 2050 than we are the year 2020? It's pretty crazy, man.
I don't even want to think about that. Yeah.
I know. We're closer to 2050 than
Yeah.
we
I'm
are
starting to
the.
get older. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I am. You're staying the same age, buddy. So, hey, if you've not joined us, welcome. This is our second Wednesday of every month presentation on Oracle Database Security. We do announcements, we do a technical topic, I make bad jokes. We'll have a question and answer period here. You're welcome to ask them in the Q&A, preferably. That way everybody can see the response. You can connect with us after as well. We've got way too many years, not quite back to the year 2000 for presentations, but at least the last 5 years of presentations available on asktom.oracle.com of videos like this. So if you want to learn about Kerberos or Key Vault or data masking or Audit Vault or Data Safe, hey, we've pretty much got you covered there. Some kind of brief announcements here. I will share this in the chat again. I always try to put the links on our repository, our GitHub repository, so that way you can go back and look at them, or you don't have to try to memorize or write down or take a picture. You can be present for the presentation, and hopefully I've put the links out there. If I missed something, hey, send me an email afterwards and say, hey, Rich, you missed a couple of these. But we've got 3 or so years worth of kind of a cheat sheet out there for you on past presentations. Quarterly patches will come out here in about, a week or so. So it'll come out pretty soon. So make sure you stay on top of your patches, database patches, application password patches, operating system patches, network patches. You got to patch it all. Stay as close to current as possible. Check out oracle.com/security-alerts for information. If you're using rack, check out fleet patching and provisioning. Or if you're doing on-premise patching or even cloud patching, check out Mike Dietrich's blog, mikedietrichde.com. He's kind of the guru when it comes to patches and upgrades. Mike Dietrich's the guy. So Key Vault 21.11, it's kind of a tongue twister. 21.11 came out recently, and there's some really neat enhancements there. So, integration with ExaDB dedicated provisioning workflow, some new certificate governance there as well. So, you can see your certificates that could expire in 30, 60, 90, or have already expired in a report there. We've got a preview of something really neat that they're working on called cross-domain key transport. This was a customer request, and they want to be able to move keys from test to production or vice versa because they have separate Key Vault clusters for production and test. So they're not actually integrated, they're not a part of the same cluster, but they do need to sometimes transfer keys across. So we've got kind of a preview of that. Oracle Key Vault client upgrades without a restart. That's really cool. So you can replace that PKCS 11 library dynamically. Now, the caveat there is there was some heavy lifting involved, so it's only available for Oracle Database 21C and 23 AI. So, unfortunately, will not be backported to 19C, but if you're looking at 23 AI, you'll have that capability. Key rotation policy monitoring. Hey, we've got some keys that are older than what we would like. Let's get a report on those. Managing that Oracle database account password for your Golden Gate integration. So we can manage that password with Oracle Key Vault as well. And a whole slew of other capabilities as well. So I'll paste this in the chat again. You can check out our links to our GitHub page where I've shared links to that, as well as these links where you can get your hands on Key Vault. So you can spin it up in the marketplace. There's versions 21.9 through 21.11 there. There's two different labs on Key Vault as well. So you can do the lab with Key Vault and TDE, So if you want to understand how to encrypt your database, you can do that. If you want to see SSH key governance, how you can set it up so you don't even have a private key on your laptop anymore, you can basically check it out from Key Vault and have it authenticate you to a database server. You can do that. And then Peter's got a video out there as well when it comes to fetching database account passwords. Peter's got several videos out there on Key Vault and TDE. So check that out. The links are in that GitHub repository for this month. And I think you'll find some really neat things in Oracle Key Vault. Same thing with data masking and subsetting. The July 2025 Oracle Enterprise Manager 24 Release 1 Update 3, another mouthful, came out recently. And there's some new capabilities or just new features in data masking and subsetting. So we've got 118 new sensitive types that have been added to that built-in library. Everything from user ID to bank information, health information, income. We've got categories now, 8 categories for all the 186 or so existing and new sensitive types. So it'll make it a little easier for you to find them. It'll group them a little bit better so you can kind of get a better idea, like DataSafe has with this grouping of categories. And then they've enhanced that sensitive data discovery engine. So it'll scan the columns, it'll scan the column data if you want, it'll scan the column names, the column comments, and then it'll do a rank-based matching. So one is the best. Hey, this data is 99% confident that it is sensitive data, maybe down to 7 where it's a little less confident there. But it'll go through it and then it'll iterate and try to figure out like, okay, well, what type of data is it there? So really cool capabilities that Kajal and team have been working on for data masking and subsetting. There's a hands-on lab for that. So if you want to get your hands-on data masking in Enterprise Manager 24 AI, you can go to this QR code. I think I've included that link in the GitHub repository as well. If not, you can go to livelabs.oracle.com and just search for data masking and you'll find that lab there. We have probably about 40 database security labs out there, including 2 related to Autonomous Database or on-prem database and Oracle Database Vault that we'll talk about today. But go ahead and kick the tires on any of these labs. Most of them you can do on our dime, so you can spin them up as a green button lab. You get that virtual machine, that virtual environment for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and you can walk through the workshop. Or if you have something you want to test and you say, okay, I'm pretty comfortable with the material, but I want to see what if I encrypt this table space instead, or what if I upload this key data, or what if I add this user to the database vault realm. You can experiment with that on Oracle Live Labs. So check that out at livelabs.oracle.com. All right, Ethan, let's turn it over to you here, sir.
All right, so thank you for the introduction, Rich. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Database Security Office Hours. My name, like Richard said, is Ethan Shmargad. I'm a product manager here on the database security team, specifically now on Database Vault and some data safe stuff as well. And today for our session, we're going to be talking about leveraging Database Vault to secure the autonomous database. And we'll hopefully get into some live demo as well and kind of show y'all some cool things on how we can harden the autonomous database. So really quick, I'm going to go through a few slides before we kind of get into it. When we talk about database security, right, we need to understand really what the risks to the database are. And we've categorized them into a few different key sections, right? The first one is obviously deployment. How are you currently managing your databases? How are you deploying them? Are you running multi-tenant? How are you currently managing those things like your configuration as well? What's going on with the database in terms of how are you managing your users, how you're managing the different aspects of the configuration, right? Big thing is patch level here as well, right, y'all? If your database is out of patch, out of a patch cycle, or they're not updated regularly, then you're potentially exposing a big hole to these attackers as well. Users as well, right? We don't want to make sure that users have potentially dormant accounts or accounts with overprivileged usage. We need to make sure we're hacking down on those accounts and making sure that they are provisioned up to the operational jobs or functionalities that those users are supposed to have, right? If they have more than those privileges, that again is a potential area of attack. Sensitive data, the big one, right? Oracle database holds your crown jewels, right? It holds all the most important sensitive data through the organization. How are we protecting that today? Do we have good access controls placed around that sensitive data? Or can an attacker just walk in through the back door and take that, and steal that data, right? And the same thing goes to applications. Now with microservices, dispersed workloads, right? We have more connections to the database than ever before. Are those connections secure? Can an attacker take advantage of something like SQL injection, right? And then again, we're talking about workloads, some of the newest workloads as well, with AI workloads. How are we controlling those data sets? How are we controlling that training data? A lot of Oracle customers are now using the Oracle database to vectorize that data and encode it. How are we securing that today? These are new workloads, but they're still residing in the database. We still need to secure them, right? And they still potentially may hold things like sensitive data as well. So there's all these challenges that we're dealing with here. And at Oracle, we kind of have technologies throughout dispersed across these sections that help us mitigate these risks. When we look at deployment, we have things like network encryption, TDE. We have database vault, which we're going to be talking about more along those lines today. Across configuration, take advantage of our cloud service data safe, where you can manage the security posture of your entire fleet of Oracle databases. Similarly, to that note, with AVDF as well as non-Oracle databases, take advantage of DBSat, which you can get going for free. So we have all of these different tools and technologies across these different sections to mitigate your risks of the Oracle database, right? And like we kind of mentioned, or I kind of mentioned, Database Vault shows up in a lot of these sections because it is a truly differentiating tool. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what it does and why it's so great, and why it helps us mitigate a lot of these risks in our databases. The purpose of Oracle Database Vault is really to help you secure your critical data from malicious activity, curious insiders, and human error overall. Database Vault is built directly into the code of the Oracle database, meaning it's directly in the kernel of the database. There is no agent to install, there's no separate service or other servers to manage. So I'm going to be walking you through about what really is the value of Database Vault and what it provides, right? So first, Oracle Database Vault must allow the database and application administrators to perform their tasks, right? We don't, at the end of the day, we need those users to still be able to do what they need to do to make the business run operationally. We don't want to interfere with those responsibilities, but we do want to enforce the company's policies on what they should and should not be doing. So, for example, if your policy is for administrators to not view the application data, then Database Vault can then enforce that policy as a technical control within the database, again, directly in the kernel. And then Database Vault can then separate even the most privileged users from that application data. So you can run specific tasks on it, but we don't want you to access the data. We don't want you to see the data, right? That does not have any implications toward the actual role or responsibility that they have to do, right? The same is true for application usage. The application account should be used to connect to the database server. So most organizations have this policy that states that application accounts are not used for day-to-day work and must only be used by the application processor, whatever the application is running. However, such policies are not always followed. It's not always a perfect world like that. So malicious or curious users can then capture those credentials and then leverage them or use them. So administrators or developers may know the password and then use it to log to the database or perform development, or fix an issue or fix a bug. While their intent might be good, they should be using their own accounts. And we're going to talk a lot more about this idea of separation of duties and how Database Vault enables us to kind of rearrange our users so that they follow this idea of separation of duties. And then also, Oracle Database Vault can enforce your IT policies as a technical control in the database. So, for example, if your organization has a deployment process and only that deployment process should be allowed to create a new database table or a view, then Oracle Database Vault can actually enforce that requirement. So we can limit it down and we can get pretty fine-grained with how we want to limit those actions. And finally, this idea of limit human errors or mistakes, right? And every administrator or developer has several projects going on at the same time. You could even argue that a database administrator, their primary concern or goal is not even actually security, right? They have so many other things that they're working on and that they're concerned about. As a result, it's very easy for someone to make a mistake, say, drop a table on production when they meant to perform an action on their development environment. Even the most seasoned developers and administrators can still make these kinds of mistakes. These are human errors that all of us are potentially prone to. And with Database Vault, we can mitigate those risks. So the goal, or what I want you to take away from here, is that Database Vault really allows for this additional layer of control of roles and privileges, but also the flexibility in terms of how you want to deploy Database Vault in your environment and how you want to create those separation of duties and the trusted path to your data, while, again, like we said, mitigating that human error and overall those risks that we discussed. And like I said, this is a differentiator, right? There's no other database that is doing what, this level of fine-grained access control directly inside the kernel of the database. So as a result, you're also getting very negligible performance impacts when you're enabling autonomous database, when you're enabling Database Vault and using Database Vault. Database Vault takes its form in a couple different ways that you can think about using it. So the first idea is this concept of realms, right? You can create a Database Vault realm, and you can think of a realm as a vault around chosen schemas or objects. And then only Database Vault owners or users participating in that realm, authorized participants, can access that data to the point where even SIS or system-wide DBAs are locked out unless they're explicitly added as authorized users of that realm. If you want to get more granular than that, you can place SQL command rules on top of them, and those apply rule sets to block or allow specific statements. For example, what we're going to see today is we're going to create a command rule to against drop table so that even authorized participants in the realm still cannot perform specific actions like drop table, for example. And then we also have this idea of secure application roles, which we can now create roles that auto-enable only when their rule set is true. So for example, sessions coming in from an app server. So if the criteria fails, the role and its privileges stay off. But if they meet the conditions, we can enable that role. And then this last thing is this idea of roles and authorizations and how it culminates to this idea of separation of duties. And like I said, we're going to be talking about this more. But Database Vault system roles, DB owner, DB account manager, these are very privileged roles that we have within Database Vault, perform this idea of separating the security administrators from the day-to-day DBA work. So even those powerful users can't bypass the controls that you set. That is really the purpose of one of the main purposes of Database Vault. So when we talk in the context of autonomous database now, I want to bring this into autonomous database. And the beauty about the Oracle database in general is that you're getting one flavor across wherever you deploy, right? And you're getting the same set of security controls. It's the same education level. It's the same, information that you need to have in your head. We're not changing configuration as we go from deployment to deployment. There's some small changes here and there, but overall, you're getting the same database no matter where you deploy. In autonomous database, you get a lot of action-packed features directly included when you provision an autonomous database. You get all of our hardening database security controls that are inside or native to the database. And you get data safe for free as well. So if you combine the two, you're really getting the best of both worlds here. You get all of our data hardening security technology that's baked inside of our databases. And again, with autonomous database, a lot of this is already done for you, right? Transparent data encryption is configured and enabled by default. TLS, right? And you have access to all these other tools as well. Not to mention patching is also taken care of for you. And now we combine that with DataSafe, you get the best monitoring, tool or service that coincides and works the best with the Oracle database so that you can, view your configuration changes in your database. You can view what users and entitlements they have, and you can spot and locate where that sensitive data is in the database. So this is quite a really nice package that, no other company is really offering. This is a powerhouse in terms of security and what you're kind of getting for free out of the box, right? And to go into DataSafe a little bit more, we're going to be talking a little bit more about DataSafe in this lab. We're going to be kind of trying to combine Database Vault on autonomous, and then what we can kind of see when we look at activity auditing within Oracle DataSafe. So we can hopefully surface some of these violations that we see. We can surface some of these logs that are being sent into DataSafe based on what we're doing with Database Vault in the database. But obviously, DataSafe capabilities stretch a lot beyond activity auditing, right? We have these idea of user assessments, security assessments, sensitive data discovery, and data masking, right? So if we're talking for your test copies, which are oftentimes more dangerous than your production copies, we have tools directly in DataSafe to mitigate that, and mask that data so we can make sure that maybe developers or downstream copies that are being used don't actually have the production data. We don't always need to have the production data. But we have a lot of these tools that stretch across DataSafe to help you also harden and monitor your configuration of your Oracle database and databases. And like I said, we're going to be talking and looking a little bit more into DataSafe during this demo as well. This demo that we're going through today is going to be based on the following LiveLab, which is currently in production today, so anyone can go leverage it. We're not taking all of the steps and tasks from this LiveLab, but if you are curious from kind of what the activities we did today against Autonomous using Database Vault, and you kind of want to go even more deeper than that and see what else you can do, this is a great lab to kind of kick the tires against and kind of talk about and play around with the concepts that we're discussing today. As a current state, right? What is the current state of our demo and what are we going to try to fix? So this is going to be the current state. We have an autonomous database in the middle and we're going to be dealing with three main users, which is SH1, which is going to be our schema owner. That's going to be where our sensitive data lies in the database. We have a database administrator known as DBA Debra. And then we have our admin as well. This is the user that's created initially upon creation of the autonomous database. And as of right now, they can really they have free reign over whatever they can do in the database. They can access sensitive data, they can drop tables, they can alter users, they can pretty much perform any command against the database that they want. This is obviously something that we want to mitigate and we want to control. And step by step, we'll be taking this configuration and hardening it and securing that SH1 data using Database Vault. Task one, we're going to be mainly looking at the database registration and then the audit trail configuration in DataSafe. So if I switch to my screens over here, Rich, we can still see my screen, right?
Yep, we gotcha.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay, so we can see on the right, we just to give you a tour of the environment real quick. On the left-hand side here, we have the SQL Developer VS Code extension. We're going to be using this. It's a, in order to connect to our database and kind of run some of the SQL statements that we're going to be running. And then on the right-hand side, we have our OCI console here. And right here, what I have open is the autonomous database that we're going to be using, given the database name OHDemo, right? And we can see as we kind of scroll down here, it's a 19C database, and we've already registered it with DataSafe. So we can go ahead and view that target registration. And we can see that it is active and it is a target database in DataSafe. And if we go into here, into activity auditing, and then we go into audit policies, we have our database right here, OHDemo. And we can see that we've already updated and provisioned some audit policies, all directly in DataSafe. Haven't touched the command line, haven't touched the SQL worksheet yet. All of this has been done directly in DataSafe already. So we're logging basic auditing events like critical database user activity. Obviously, we want to audit those admin user activities as well. And we've already enabled some Oracle predefined policies as well. And we've done this all with a few clicks of the button. And we've also started that audit trail as well. So we've configured and provisioned our audit policies, and then we started our audit trail so that it properly writes to the database and to DataSafe as well. So this is what we've already kind of configured. And now we can go into task two. So task two, we're going to kind of go into creating our database users. Like I said, we're going to be talking about separation of duties. That's where we're going to really introduce this in task two. We're going to configure those separation of duties, and then we're going to enable Database Vault. And when we enable Database Vault, we have to restart the database. So during that time, I'll kind of go through a few more slides around separation of duties. So now point your attention to the right-hand side or the left-hand side of the screen, sorry. We've already connected to admin. We already have our other users here that we will be creating preloaded, and we'll connect to those after we restart the database. But let's open up a SQL worksheet here, and we give it a second for the connection to attach. And let's start creating our users. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create our SH1 schema and then create some tables based on that schema. So this is what we're doing here. Let's run this. All right, so we've created those users, and then we also want to create those tables. So we've created those tables. And then the last thing we want to do is before we create our actual separation of duty or our database vault users is we're going to want to create that DBA Debra role. So let's create that. Okay. And then the last thing is we want to make her an admin, obviously. So we're going to grant the role PDB DBA to her as well. Awesome. Okay. So we have SH1 created. We have the schema created. We have the tables that we want created. Now let's go into configuring our users, right? So let's configure DV owner, right? And DV owner is gonna be our very privileged user. And the point is that we're kind of we're taking away the power from sys by creating these users, right? We want to separate these duties and these responsibilities across different users as we enable and configure Database Vault. And then we'll also create the DV account manager. This, although we're not going to be using this role in the demo today, this is the primary user that's in charge of, managing those accounts in the Oracle database. So again, we don't want sys to have that responsibility. We want to outsource that or move that responsibility over to a different user. So then we're kind of separating all of these privilege activities across different users, right? Okay, and then the last thing that we are going to do is now enable Database Vault, and then we'll have to restart the database. Let's clear the output just to make sure. Let's command and take. Yep. All right, perfect. So we have enabled Database Vault. Now we need to bounce the database or restart it. So if we go to autonomous, we go into my compartment. Okay, so this one right here. Let's restart this database. So more actions, restart. Let's confirm the restart. Okay, great. Now, while this is going, let's kind of talk a little bit more about separation of duties, right? So, like we talked about, Database Vault works best when the day-to-day tasks of running a database are cleanly split across the critical personas in a given organization. Infrastructure DBAs, typically they can handle the plumbing and the infrastructure, the installation, the patching, the backup. Yet they never read the business data, or they never have the requirement to read the business data. Similarly, application DBAs concentrate on the objects in the code inside a schema or a PDB, maybe occasionally querying that data to tune the application, but in general, right, they don't need full access as well. And then security engineers are usually the ones that stand apart because they define the database fault realms, they'll define the command rules, the baseline standards. And then support engineers can round things out by creating those accounts or separating those passwords. So we can kind of see how we don't necessarily want all of these responsibilities as one user. In a typical organization, they wouldn't be one user, right? We don't want these users to all log in using one account, using the same account with the same privileges. We want them to each have their own accounts and have their own privileges to be able to do their jobs, right? And make sure that we're not over privileging or giving them privileges that they don't necessarily need to perform their job, right? So these personas kind of translate into concrete role-based privileges inside the Oracle database. The CDB level admin can, user embodies kind of this idea of the infrastructure DBA. Database Vault kind of lets you manage the container and the blocks protected around the application realms. But then application DBA might get scoped in, like we granted to DBA Debra, that PDB DBA role, which is a powerful role within one pluggable database. So we want to mitigate all those things with Database Vault. And like I said, we want to spread out these responsibilities across multiple users. However, we recognize that sometimes one person has to wear multiple hats in an organization. Not everyone is going to be a large enterprise customer that has different teams with different folks dedicated to different parts of the database environment. Sometimes one person has to wear multiple hats. But by creating a composite role, right, you can union, any privileges that you need from persona while still letting Database Vault enforce realm boundaries, and write, and make sure we're tracking those actions as well. And if the team grows later, that composite role can be split back into original pieces with no real policy rewrite. So in short, you really get a lot of flexibility with Database Vault. And in terms of how you want to deploy it, how you want to use it, and up to how much you want to use it to fit your organization's responsibilities. You can combine those responsibilities, yet you want to preserve the control and the traceability and to make sure that you're keeping the sensitive data or the crown jewels in the database safe. So with that being said, let's now go back to our environment and let's see if, okay, perfect. So we can see that the database has restarted successfully. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to make sure that Database Vault is properly enabled. Yeah, and this is expected because we restarted the database, so we have to reconnect the worksheet. Okay, great. So we can see right here, DV configuration status is true and DV enable status is true. So we're good to go, and we are configured to start using Database Vault. Before we kind of go into the next steps, now that we've created our DBA Debra, DV owner, and SH1 user, let's connect to those sessions as well. So I'm going to connect to these sessions. So we'll have 4 sessions open and kind of 4 worksheets that we're kind of working from. I'll save this as well to make sure that we have a good name for this. Call this admin. Perfect. And we've have these other connections as well. Let's open up SQL worksheets for each one of them. And we're going to be kind of bouncing in between tabs here. So let's save this. We'll call this DBA Debra. Perfect. We'll have one for DB owner. And then last but not least, we'll have one for the schema owner, which is SH1. So we've created our SQL worksheets now. So this is kind of what we're going to try to get to essentially with this next task is that we are going to be creating a realm around SH1. We're going to authorize that SH1 user or that schema as an authorized participant of that realm. So they will still have access to run those commands and view that data within SH1. But we are going to be restricting DBA Debra and admin from then running, similar commands, running selects and things like that. So idea is we're keeping the data away from DBA Debra and admin, right? So even admin can't even access that data, and we're only authorizing the actual schema owner, which is SH1. And the idea here is that there's two checks that's happening here when we're creating a realm, right? There's the first check, which is does the user have the correct roles and privileges to operate or to execute that command? That's one. And with Database Vault enabled on top of it, it actually adds a second check. So now not only do you need to have the roles and privileges to execute that command, but you now also need to be an authorized participant of the realm to fully execute these commands. So now instead of just one check, which is do you have the roles and privileges to run this, it's now an additional check on top of that protects and further protects that data. So now you need to have two checks to make sure that you're an authorized participant of the realm for you to be able to do any of those commands that may act on sensitive data. And now let's try to see what these users can do. Like I said, and like we saw in the first kind of architecture slide, currently these users kind of have free reign. They can kind of do whatever they want. So if we kind of go into DBA Debra and let's attach the connection here, right? So we can see here that we can still query session roles. And if we wanted to, we can also directly see and query the data as well with DBA Debra. Right, so DBA Debra has full access right now. She can see anything. She can run the select. She can run from session roles. But because of separation of duties, which we've already configured just by enabling Database Vault, an action like that has to do with a user, for example, like a create user right here, is going to fail. Why is that going to fail? Because when we enable Database Vault, we've enabled those separation of duties, right? We made sure that we separated those privileges across different roles. So right now, this is not an action that DBA Debra can actually perform. This is an action that has been moved to another user as well. So as a result, an action like this, just out of the box with enabling and configuring Database Vault, this is not an action that DBA Debra can now take. She can still query the data, right? She can do a select star, she can do a select count. So now let's create a realm in Database Vault called protect sh1 to protect the sh1 schema from admin and DBA Debra. So we are going to run this as DB owner. So let's hop over to DB owner. We're going to need to attach session. Okay, there we go. So now as DB owner, let's create this realm. So we're creating the realm protect sh1. Let's create that. Okay, PLC equals procedure successfully completed. And now let's make sure that we've actually created the realm. So let's run this query right here. Okay, great. So we can see that the realm has been created, a mandatory realm to protect the tables in the SH1 schema. Fantastic. Now we need to add the objects to this realm. We want to add the SH1 schema to this realm. And in this case, we can decide specific objects that we want to protect within the SH1 schema. For the purposes of this demo, we are going to just be securing every object under the SH1 schema. That's defined by these percents right here. So let's go ahead and run this. And then the last thing that we want to do is because SH1 is the schema owner, maybe we want them to be an authorized participant in this realm. Maybe the same rules that apply to DBA Debra and admin, we don't want them to necessarily apply to the schema owner. They might have to do some things in the database and on that schema. So let's add them as an authorized participant to the realm. So let's go ahead and run this command. So now we have authorized SH1 schema or the SH1 user as a participant of this realm. And now what we're going to see is if we go back to admin, for example, and we try to run, and the last thing what we're going to do as admin is actually we're going to create the audit policies, the unified audit policies to track this realm. It's going to throw this error, but it should be okay. Okay, great. We've created the audit policy to kind of track what's going on in this realm. And then now what we can do is as admin, we can see that when we try to run a select, insufficient privileges. So that realm is taken into effect. It's working. It's not allowing admin to now run a select star with that data. SH1 can query that data, right? So again, admin, we saw we couldn't. SH1, we can query that data. So now let's go back to here. Maybe actually let's go ahead and check out. Go see if we see any of this in data
Hmm.
saves.
And
Audit
then
reports,
look at all activity
all
at the
that.
top. And then limit the targets to
Yeah,
just
yeah, just to OH demo. So we already see that we've have some things that we've already created, right? This audit policy that we just created to track that realm, we can see that it has showed up in data safe, right? We can see the command, we can see the SQL text that we used, and then we can also see that we added authorizations to that realm as well. So we can kind of see these alerts or these audit logs kind of trickle into data safe, and on those we can do different things like we can generate a report based on them if we wanted. We can create an alert to notify us, for example, when these specific activities are triggered, so that we can get an email sent to whatever user to make sure that they should go check out these logs. So we can do a lot of things as soon as we get these audit logs into DataSafe. We have a lot of actions that we can take across generating custom reports, generating a predefined report. We can manage the schedule of the reports as well as create a rule. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of things that we can do as soon as we get into data safe and we have those logs in there. And what we did here, like we kind of showed off, is that we created this realm protect sh1. We authorized the sh1 schema to be able to still query that data. So they're an authorized participant of that realm, but we were able to keep admin and DBA Debra out of that data. And then we combine that with DataSafe as we registered that target with DataSafe. We have those logs coming into DataSafe where then we can take further action on them, generate reports, manage the report schedules, so on and so forth. In task 4 now, let's say maybe we got a little too carried away. We saw database vault, we got really excited. We were like, let's turn it on immediately. But maybe let's take a step back. Maybe we need to do a little bit more testing. We need to see how database vault is affecting our database and our configurations. To do that, we can do it very simply using simulation mode. So we're going to enable simulation mode. We're going to check those simulation logs so they'll still show us the violations. So for example, admin will now be able to query the data now that simulation mode is on, but it will still show up as a realm violation in the simulation log. So we can kind of see what we can expect when we fully enforce database vault. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we are going to add DBA Debra as well as an authorized participant of that realm. So now let's go back here. As DB owner, let's go back there. Let us update the realm and put it in simulation mode. Now users like admin and DBA Debra are able to query the data again. So if we run this now, right now admin can query the data again because again, the realm is now in simulation mode. Similarly to DBA Debra, right? DBA Debra can also query the data. She can do it as well again because we've placed the realm in simulation mode. But the goal is to really see how our database would be affected if these database vault controls were enforced, right? That's the whole goal of simulation mode. And to do that, we can check, like I said, the simulation log. So if we go back to DB owner and we run this query, okay, we can see these violations that we just kind of did, right? We can see who did the violation. We can see the DB module that it came from. So it came from me, right? And we can see kind of what happened there and the violations that kind of occurred. We can see the admin violation there as well. So now that we did that, so we can kind of see what we can expect to see once we enforce Database Vault.
Can you go back to your DBA Deborah tab
Sure, sure.
and then do a show user here? Because I'm afraid you might be, this guy might have connected as admin for some reason. No, SH1. Ah, this guy is connected. The
Hmm.
sheet says,
I wonder.
um,
Okay. This is because we need to connect the sheet as DBA Debra. Yeah. So when you run the VS Code, yeah, you have to attach, make sure SQL worksheet is attached to the right area. Now it should be good. Let's try again. Yeah, now we're at DB-Debra. So now we're all
Well, and
good to go.
then, yeah, run your query one more time so we can see that Deborah fails. So do the select of the employee data or customer data.
Yep. Yeah. And now we should see it failing.
So it should succeed, and then
Oh,
we
it should succeed because
simulation.
it's in simulation mode. But as soon as so that's we should be seeing. But now if we add
Yeah,
uh
let's query the simulation log again so we can see that new record show up.
okay, so if I go back to DB owner, now we should see it show up.
Yeah, there we are.
There we go. Right
Cool.
there. Okay. Now, like we talked about, let's grant DBA Debra for the realm protect SH1. So now we are adding DBA Debra as an authorized participant to the realm. We do that as DV owner. Let's run this. Now what we want to do is we want to take the realm back out of simulation mode. We want to now put it back into enforcement mode. So let's update the protect SH1 realm. Right, and now we should see that once again, admin should not be able to query the data, right? Insufficient privileges. But DBA Debra, now that we've added her as an authorized participant, if we run the same statement, DBA Debra can still now query the data because again, now we have two authorized participants in the realm. We have the SH1 or the schema owner who we've authorized as a participant of the realm. And like I said, what we just did is we authorized DBA Debra as a participant of that realm as well. Okay, great. So now we can go into task 5. So what we did here, again, this is a recap of the task we just did. We added DBA Debra as an authorized participant. We also, messed around with simulation mode and then checked the simulation logs. And we've added DBA Debra, like I said, as that authorized participant. So now we have two authorized participant. Authorized should really say DBA Debra as well. But that's kind of what we did in this last task. Now for task 5, this is our last task. Like I said, when we talked about the different ways you can use Database Vault, let's say we want to get a little bit more granular than that. We've added SH1 and DBA Debra as authorized participants of this realm, but maybe we don't want them to be able to still do everything as an authorized participant. Like for example, a drop table is a very serious command. Maybe we don't want them performing that drop table command, even if they are authorized participant of that realm. So we're going to create a command rule to prevent them from performing the drop table. We're going to create an audit policy to capture the violation. And then if we have time, we'll see if we can surface some of these things up in DataSafe again. As DV owner, let's create this command rule to restrict or prevent users from performing a drop table. Okay, let's run this. And let's also create an audit policy to kind of capture some of this stuff again. So when we create a unified audit policy for command rules, we're actually creating them against the rule sets or the conditions that we place for the command rule to take into effect. We run these as admin, create the policy. Again, obviously, admin is not an authorized participant of the realm. They should not be able to do a drop table because they're not even an authorized participant. So they shouldn't even be able to do it, right? That's great. But now DBA Debra, who is an authorized participant of the realm, if we run that same command with her, insufficient privileges, command rule violation for drop table. And that's because while she is an authorized participant of the realm, we have created that command rule to stop even those authorized participants from performing that drop table.
Hey, Ethan, would you disconnect as Deborah and
Sure.
then give it a second and reconnect? The reason why I want you to do this is because we want that audit policy to take effect for this
Right.
session.
Yeah. Right.
And it takes effect for the person who creates it, I believe. But for other attached users, it takes effect when they connect the next time.
Okay. So
So,
now let's run this again and we can see if it shows. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And
All
I'll
right.
keep an eye on it because it may take a minute or
Yeah.
so.
It takes usually a little bit of time for it to show up in DataSafe, but we can see if we can surface
Yeah.
it. Oh, we have to reconnect the worksheet. Let's do that. Let's try it again. Okay. So now let's check it out. We'll see if it applies. And again, we can see that also as SH1 it's going to perform the same thing. Now, Rich, I'm assuming if we want to see the violation of SH1, we probably have to reconnect this session as well.
Yeah, let's disconnect,
But
reconnect
but
now.
you want to reconnect it?
Yeah, might as well. We gotta,
No,
let
we got
me,
a little bit of time. What are we on time check? Okay, yeah, we're good.
yeah, we got time.
So as SH1, let's disconnect and reconnect. Give it 1 sec. Okay, now let's run this command again. Oh, we have to reattach the session.
It's so much easier like in SQL Plus, but it looks cool in VS.
Yeah, but it looks cool, and we're trying to show off the
Yeah.
modern ecosystem here. We're trying, Rich. We're trying. Okay, so let's run this. Again, SH1 is an authorized participant of the realm, but that command rule for drop table is restricting even the SH1 owner from being able to perform
Yeah,
that
yeah.
drop
And
table.
go ahead and refresh your data safe window right there for all activity. I think it's really neat that you can even stop the owner of the objects from accidentally
Yeah.
destroying their data, dropping table, truncating table, any of that stuff. And then, yeah, you can see if you go to the one right below that, Ian, that's actually the database vault command failure audit.
Yep.
So this is
Command
showing
failure
that,
right there.
hmm
Yep.
yep, that we're auditing that. We get that into data safe. And then, like you said, you create the alerts on this because these are high value actions.
Yep.
If somebody's trying to drop table and database vault stops it,
Yep.
hey, I want to know about that.
Yeah, and Rich, you said it exactly. This is information that, is pertinent and potentially relevant to users outside of the main users of DataSafe, right? So we want to make it easy for you to be able to take these reports, to be able to distribute them to the right people in your organizations, whether, those are people in the security operations center, whether that's information that's relevant for, your LOB owner or your IT manager. We want to be able to distribute this data in a quickly and timely manner, which is
Yeah.
what I think is really cool about getting these audit logs into DataSafe, is that you then have a lot of options in terms of what you want to do with them, how you want to report on them, and so on and so forth.
Well, and this is a competitive differentiator for us.
Yeah,
You can take this to your customers and say, Mr. Customer, let me show you how Oracle Database and especially Oracle Autonomous Database secures your data even from destructive behavior of the schema or application owner.
yeah,
And then let's see how we can get that audit data in there. Then let's see how we can alert on that.
yeah.
Can your other cloud databases or on-prem databases do that?
Yeah.
No, sir, they
And
can't.
like that slide that I showed at the beginning, with autonomous database, as soon as you spin up that thing, you get so much security just out of the box completely for free. You get some things that are already turned on and enabled for you, right? We talked about TDE, so encryption is on by default. We also have MTLS network encryption. The patching is done for you, and then you also have a lot of those other security controls directly baked inside the database that are available to you. Combine that with the monitoring capabilities of DataSafe,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a package that's really unbeatable when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to security.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So that's the end of the demo. A few more slides, and then I'll hand it back to Rich to wrap it up. So again, what we did here, we prevented the use of drop table with a command rule. So even that our authorized participants like DBA Debra and even our schema owner, like Rich said, SH1, cannot perform drop table, even though they are authorized participants of that realm. So recap a bit of what we did today, right? We registered the database with DataSafe. I already did this. We walked you through the audit policies that we provisioned, as well as the target database registration. We created those users with clear roles. We created that separation of duty and then enabled Database Vault. We protected that critical data in the SH1 schema with a realm protecting all the objects in that schema. And then we authorized the schema owner SH1 as a participant of that realm, as well as then DBA Debra. We tested some policies in simulation modes. Sometimes we don't want, we want to make sure we test out the configuration before we actually enforce it. That's exactly what simulation is mode for. And then you can always check the simulation logs to make sure that you're expecting what you're expecting as a user. And then lastly, right, we created that command rule to prevent drop table, even through those authorized participants of the realm. They cannot do drop table. And then we viewed some of these audit violations and some of these logs in DataSafe, where then we can report on them, we can download them, we can create custom reports, we can create alerts on them, and so on, so forth. We want to give you a database that you can measure, monitor, and then mitigate that risk. And we do that with baking controls, right? Encryption, auditing, database vault, SQL firewall, and 23i, right into the engine of the database. And then we let you combine that with data safe, which really dials in those configuration controls for you and helps you monitor across not just one database, but across your entire Oracle database fleet. And this way we can make sure that as an organization, your Oracle databases have a secure security posture, and that you can continue to mitigate those risks as your business objectives grow, as your operational requirements grow, as you're scaling up your workloads, as you're adding new workloads. We want to make sure that your Oracle database can remain secure and that it can help you mitigate those risks. Like I said, we have some live labs available to you. What we did today is based off of the lab, like I talked about, which is preventing the unauthorized access with autonomous database. A lot of the activities we did can be found in that lab as well, so feel free to kick the tires on that. And then we have our main flagship lab that goes a lot more in depth and in detail, and has allows you to play around with Database Vault and kind of kick the tires regarding that. And then we have some documentation as well. We have our getting started guide if you want to start, with your own environment and start, provisioning a realm, provisioning those separation of duties. This is a great place to get started in terms of documentation. And if you're looking for more granular, more fine-grained, more detailed information, maybe you have a complex use case that your customer is working through or something like that, then we have the full administration guide for your use as well.